NVIDIA has announced their 4000 series graphics cards. To save you some time from watching the entire presentation, here's the quick and dirty. NVIDIA's Ada chipset. Pretty impressive upgrade over the 3000 series GPUs. I mean, we're talking twice the power efficiency. The shader cores alone are double what they were in the previous system. The ray tracing cores are at 200. That's almost 3 times as much as it was in the 3000 series GPUs. The deep learning cores are at 1400. That is 4 times what was shown in the 3000 series graphics cards. Now, with every generation, obviously, we expect there to be an enhancement in those chips. So they did a very good job here. They increased it considerably over last generation. And last generation's graphics cards were already powerful enough. Well, this time around, they're claiming 2 to 4 times the performance over last generation. Is that something you need? Well, let's talk about all the features. So here we can see that NVIDIA's new 4000 series, at least in the presentation they gave us, is a massive performance increase over the last 2 generations of these graphics cards. Now, with that being said, it's also got a pretty hefty increase on the power wattage needed, even though it's supposed to be twice as efficient. So, I mean, you can see here that the Ada requires a 450 watt power supply to be efficient and utilized to its fullest extent. With all these changes, NVIDIA is claiming that their new ray tracing performance is up to 16% greater over the previous generation's graphics card. Now, keep in mind that this presentation was only showing you just a couple games that they had cherry-picked for this demonstration. Cyberpunk 2077, as you can see here, is one of those games that they cherry-picked. Later on, you'll see that the Microsoft Flight Simulator was the other one. Now, the way they say they are achieving this new performance is with something called shader execution reordering. Think of the earlier CPUs before hyperthreading came out, where everything was going through one at a time and being processed. Well, what this new SER is doing is it's saying, okay, well, I'm rendering this scene. I have shadows, I have light, I have all these reflections, and it's combining each one of those together and processing them at the same time instead of each block separately. So it'll do all the shadows and all the light rays and all the reflections and then process it through in that manner to get this new performance increase. So when you combine the new ray tracing algorithms and you add it into the DLSS system, this is where you start seeing a lot of increase in the frame rates. So the DLSS 2 would use the AI, and what it would do would take a low resolution frame and the high resolution frame and predict a new frame to display, but it did it on a pixel by pixel basis. So very time consuming, and yes, it did increase frame rates, but it could get better. So that's where they came in with the DLSS 3. What this does is it utilizes AI to generate an entire frame at once instead of a pixel at once. So it looks at the old image and the new image and creates an entirely new image from both of those, and then displays it, and when it combines all that information together, that's how you get the increased frame rate. And they're saying that by cutting out that middleman of the game itself, the frames per second are increased drastically. In this demo right here, which is a game that they showed, this is the Cyberpunk 2077, they're showing you the differences between an off and on, and the increase was almost 4 times as much. Here, again, is another game that utilizes DLSS, which is the Microsoft Flight Simulator. Same thing. They are saying that when you have DLSS turned on, your frame rate increases drastically. Now, keep in mind that these were cherry-picked games, and they're comparing it to it being off and on with DLSS 3. They are not comparing it to the previous generation DLSS 2 compared to DLSS 3. And that, I think, is where they missed out on a good opportunity to show us what the performance really could do here. One of the things they talked about during this keynote, which is something that I was actually pretty impressed with, and modders are going to have so much fun with, is this RTX Remix. Apparently the way it works is you run a video game, such as this one here that they're showing in the demo, which is Elder Scrolls, and the game is captured into this RTX Remix program. And when it's inside this program, you can run some AI enhancements, as you can see here, and it increases the texture resolutions, and it changes the environment so it starts reflecting lighting and things like that better. And there's a whole bunch of presets and everything that come into this program, so modders are going to be able to have a lot of fun with older video games. Here again, you can see what they're doing with some of the mods that they implemented into this Elder Scrolls, and how it definitely changes the objects within this game to give it a much better looking feel and a much more realistic look to it. I'm excited for this specific feature myself. I'm not a modder, but I definitely play a lot of video games and utilize the mods that people put out there. So I can just imagine what people are going to do with this and how it's going to change a lot of the older games we play. Now for the cards and the specs themselves. NVIDIA did provide us with a few diagrams here, the performance between the 4080 and the 4090 compared to the previous generation 3080 and 3090. Now again, keep in mind that these are games that they cherry-picked. These cards have not gotten to any of us to actually test them ourselves to see if their claims are accurate or not, but they're claiming that it's a 2 to 4% performance increase over previous generations. So here you see the 4090 compared to the 3090 Ti, and it's saying you're getting twice the performance at minimum. The 4080 here comes in two different variants, a 12 gig and a 16 gig, which we'll talk about the specs here shortly. And they're comparing these performance specs to the 3080 Ti. Now, if you look at that little disclaimer at the bottom, they do say that one generation is running off of a super resolution performance mode, while the 4000 series is running off a frame generation mode. So it's not really apples to apples here. Obviously, one is trying to pump out frames and one's trying to pump out resolution performance. So again, we need to get these cards in hand to test them out ourselves before we can give you accurate information. The display that you're seeing here is, again, some more information about all the cards compared to each other. So the 3090 Ti compared to the 480, the 4080 16 gig, and the 4090. And again, the performance is stating anywhere between 2 to 4%, depending on if you're using DLSS and ray tracing, things like that. Again, take this with a grain of salt. Once we get these cards in hand, we'll be able to provide you more realistic numbers. All right, now for the cards themselves. NVIDIA is going to be releasing two 4080 models, just like they did with the 3080s. They released two different memory versions of it at release. Now these cards, you see that they're going to be $900 and $1,200 respectively. You'll probably think to yourself, why would I pay that extra money for 4 gigs of RAM? What they don't show you on these slides is, they do show you on their website, there is actually a pretty good spec difference between them. It's not just memory. You're actually getting increased cores as well with the increased 16 gigs. Do I think these prices are good for these cards? Not really. I think they should have had the prices lower to give consumers more of a reason to go with the 4080 series. I honestly think, in my opinion, they're charging more for these cards to make up the loss that they're going to get with the 3000 series because of the big mistake they had with stock and the overpricing and things like that. Now, they also are coming out with a 4090 series as well. They're just going to have one model here. It's going to be a 24 gig model, and it's going to be coming out October 12th, while the 4080s are supposed to be coming out sometime in November. But the 4090 model is going to be coming out at $1,600. Now, is that a good price for the 4090 model? It actually is, when you compare the performance of the 4090 compared to the 3090 model. The 3090, when it came out, I believe was $1,500, and then they eventually came out with the 3090 Ti, which was $2,000. Do I think the price of this model should have been lower? Yeah, I think this model should have probably been like $1,299 or $1,399. Again, just to kind of give consumers more of a reason to want to get these cards. But even at $1,599, this card is still a beast of a card compared to anything you can get out there right now. Now you may be wondering, what about the other manufacturers? Here is an image that NVIDIA supplied to us during this keynote. Your favorite manufacturers are going to be releasing their own video cards as well. With the exception of EVGA, there was a big, breakup between NVIDIA and EVGA when it came to their graphics cards. There will not be any 4000 series from EVGA, but you will have MSI, Asus, Gigabyte. All your favorites are going to be coming out with their graphics cards. Pricing is going to be a little bit more with these graphics cards because they do give you better cooling and typically overclocked cards on top of that. So just expect to be paying a little bit more with your favorite manufacturer here. Alright, now for the fun part here. I've got this presentation put together here to show you the old 3000 series cards as well as the 4000 series side by side so you can see the differences between the two. Now, as everybody knows, the market is flooded with 3000 series graphics cards, so the prices are extremely low on these guys right now. I think when I looked at it last, you can get a 3090 Ti for like $600, $700, something like that on eBay. So that's where it kind of gets a little crazy when you look at the prices for the 4080 models, because yes, they are doing 2 to 4 times more performance, at least what NVIDIA says on their keynote. Again, once we get the cards and actually start testing them with all the games, we'll know a lot better at that point. But again, it also comes down to, is spending the extra money on the 4000 series worth it over the extremely cheap 3000 series, which is still going to last you a few years and play every game at 4K on its highest settings? That is going to be up to you, and you'll just have to look at all the reviews on the 4000 series compared to the 3000 series and just choose which path is best for you. You're not going to go wrong either way. The 3000 series is a phenomenal series. The 4000 series looks to be just as good. So with that being said, some of the difference here is as I was saying, between the 12 gig and the 16 gig 4080 model, it's not just a RAM difference between the two of them here. That extra $300 is giving you 2100 more cores with the 16 gig model, which is definitely going to increase the performance over the 12 gig model. The 4090 series, that you can see that they just went crazy on the cores. That's 16,000 cores compared to 4080 16 gig model, which has 9700 as its closest competitor. When you compare these cores to all the 3000 series models, you can see that 4090 blows everything out of the water. I mean, even the 3090 Ti doesn't even come close to that. The 4080 16 gig model, while it has lower cores than some of the 3000 series models, what really helps this card, at least on paper, outperform the 3000 series is it's using the new 4nm chipset, which gives you a lot better power efficiency, and it's allowing them to increase the core clock of each one of these CUDA cores, which then allows it to have a lot more performance over the 3000 series. So at the end of the day, the 4000 series, yes, is a good card on paper. I'm hoping that I can get a hold of some of these to do some actual live benchmarks for you guys and provide you more information as to which one I think you should go with. I personally am currently using a 3080 in my system here, so I would actually like to test out, the 4080 and the 4090s myself, but I don't know if I'll be able to get a hold of those at launch or even be able to afford them, to be honest. Now, one thing to keep in mind with these graphics cards is it does have a new pin adapter for these graphics cards. Graphics cards are supposed to come with that adapter in the box, so keep that in mind. These are also, if you're going with the 4090 model, requiring a higher wattage to be used compared to the 3000 series as well. The 4080 12 gig model is just using 300 watts, so most power supplies that you have right now are going to be fine. But the 4080 16 gig and the 4090 model do require 450 watts apiece, so keep that in mind when you're looking to buy your new graphics cards as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button. So make sure you subscribe so you can keep up to date with my other videos that I do. I hope this answered some of your questions about the 4000 series graphics cards. If I missed something, feel free to ask in the comments and I will try to answer your question as soon as I can. Aside from that, have a great day.